Good morning, everybody. Welcome to Medina's services here locally as well as on the internet. Those of you on the internet, welcome to this, what is it now, November 18th, right? Not the 28th, 18th, 2023. And here we are all together. That was a song, wasn't it, by the Beatles, All Together Now? I forget that now. At any rate, good to have everybody here. What a crowd we have. We have a full house, so that's really nice. And folks downstairs as well. Good to have all of you with us. You know, this time of the season, we're only 6 days out now. 6 days out of Thanksgiving. And as Tim just sang and reminding all of us of how thankful we ought all to be. That's why I love this holiday so much. It brings full circle. You know, the year now is ending, so to speak, from Thanksgiving to Thanksgiving, or feast to feast, Feast of Tabernacles to Feast of Tabernacles, same season, so to speak. And here we are, hopefully taking time, from time to time, to look back on your life and consider how thankful we all ought to be. We live in such a blessed country, and we are such a blessed, and I'll add, spoiled people. I mean, we really are, in all due respect to this wonderful country that we live in. And those that came before us who settled it, when you go back to the first Thanksgiving and how they were really, I mean, they were pioneers, etching out travel paths that frankly were not marked. I mean, they were, in all due respect, in uncharted waters, no pun intended, with them crossing the ocean the way they did. But things are changing, brethren, aren't they? I would hope that the understanding, recognition, the observations that all of us have today are beginning to obtain the focus of recognizing this isn't the same United States of America that I grew up in. And I think many of you would agree that it is quite a different place. I think back when I grew up primarily in the 50s, and my teenage years were in the wild and crazy 60s. And then in the 70s, of course, going into business, developing a family, and needless to say, connecting with God's church. All these things in my life I look back on with gratefulness and thankfulness and good memories, some pretty tough as well, but nevertheless, overall, what a life. And I would hope you would take time to recognize how you too have had what you have and have been blessed in the way you've been blessed, but in so doing, side by side, recognizing we are living in a different country. Changes are happening all around us. Things are becoming very fluid, dynamic, frankly, undefined in this postmodern thinking world where everything is under question. Everything is being scrutinized. Everything is being evaluated and reassessed to make determinations on, you know what, maybe it really didn't happen that way. Maybe I'm really not a boy. Maybe I'm really not. Maybe I'm not. And all these things get questioned. And then first thing you know, what emerges and erupts is confusion, a lot of confusion. And frankly, some of these things are marginalized, dismissed as conspiracy theories. And this is a coping mechanism, by the way. It is a coping mechanism. As I've often said, the only thing different between a conspiracy theory and reality is about 6 months, depending on what it is. Sometimes it takes years for that conspiracy theory to manifest out into reality. But it doesn't discount the fact that what is happening is real, even though in the timeline, it's hard to recognize what is indeed happening. And so I present to all of us today, because we are living in a time where people are in fact denying certain things are happening around us. And the fact of it is, I don't know about you, and I don't think I'm the only one thinking this, but I'm watching the United States slip away right before my very eyes. Due to multiple things, due to many venues of feeding events and policies that are changing the culture and the nature of our social structure here in the United States, and those of you in Canada as well. They have now legalized euthanasia in Canada. Oh yeah, amazing, amazing. We kill babies, and now we can kill each other when we're old if we can't deal with the life that we have. It's a wild and crazy world. It's a wild and crazy world. So today I want to give all of us an FYI. You know what that means? For your information. For your information. There are sometimes presentations that are edifying, sometimes that are teaching and nurturing and so forth and so on. But I want to give all of us today, I want to take some time to review some things for us, an FYI, so that if we are not recognizing some of the things that are going on, hopefully this will help you to begin to see some of the things around you that are indeed manifesting and beginning to get legs, meaning progression. It's progressing. It's developing. It is indeed growing. So I want to address some of this information today because all of us need to recognize we are in an end time saga. There is an end game to the saga that you're involved with. In other words, we are on path to a destination that is going to take us to a specific place as a nation, culture, and society. And your Bible, and I'm not only talking about the United States, I'm talking about the whole world, is on this timeline. And we are heading to this end game result. Because we're all involved with it. We're all in this end game progression toward this destination. So what am I talking about? Let me introduce to you where that end time, end game is leading us to, because I'd like to add some definition to it today. So if you would, turn with me, and I hope you have your Bibles greased a little bit, because we're going to be going through quite a few scriptures here real fast to Daniel chapter 7. And Daniel chapter 7 gives us a bit of an introduction to what I'm talking about in terms of the end game and where we are indeed going. This is Daniel the prophet. I'm not going to give you a lot of background. You should know some of this stuff already because I don't really have the time, and I've got a lot of information to share with all of you. So in verse 16 of Daniel 7, I came near unto one of them that stood, talking about the angel that Daniel was getting the information from that led up to verse 16 in the preceding verses. And he is told by this angel that this is a truth, that he told me and made me to know the interpretation of these things. This is not my interpretation, it's the angel's interpretation. He says to Daniel, the angel does, in verse 17, these are great beasts, that is the beasts that are in the previous scriptures, which are four kings are going to arise out of the earth. We understand them to be what? Babylon. We understand them to be the Medes, and we understand them to be Alexander the Great and the great empires of Greece, and then of course the manifestation of that into a Greco-Roman Babylonian system. And those are the sequences that we're told. And in verse 18, the angel says in this case also that the saints of the Most High shall take the kingdom, possess the kingdom forever and ever, meaning the good guys win. In the end of the end game, God's kingdom comes to earth. Christ lands on the Mount of Olives, sets up world-ruling government, and we are kings and priests in that kingdom. And the good guys win, and all that you're going to be introduced to here or reminded of here is going to go bye-bye. Thank God. Thank God. But at any rate, he goes on here and he says, let's unpack the fourth beast. In verse 19, Daniel 7, then I would know that the truth of the fourth beast, which was diverse from the others, exceedingly dreadful, whose teeth were of iron, this is all symbolic, this is very metaphoric, and his nails of brass, which devoured and broke in pieces and stamped the residue with its feet. And the Roman Empire was that in its preceding. This was a pre-type, the Roman Empire. But there is something coming at the end of similar type that is after the Babylonian Greco-Roman model. And that's what we're connected with here. In verse 20, the genealogy takes us then on to this. 10 horns that were in its head, and of the others which came up, before whom 3 fell, even of the horn that had eyes and a mouth that spoke very great things. Another horn came up among the 10 horns, whose look was more stout, more proud than his other fellows. I beheld. That same horn, that one that came up among the 10, made war with the saints and prevailed against them. So much for the rapture. This guy, Dr. Jeremiah, has got a new book out about the rapture going on, advertising it all over the place. I got news for Dr. Jeremiah. It might be a heady statement, but nevertheless, it's true. There is no rapture, brethren. It's not even in your Bible. This system is going to have its way with Christians who stand in the gap and resist its momentum, influence, encroachment, and infiltration into your personal lives. And it is going to happen. That's what your Bible talks about. It's warning us. It's an FYI right here in Daniel chapter 7. He goes on, I beheld, verse 21, let me remind us again and reiterate. I beheld the same horn made war with the saints and prevailed against them until the return of Christ. The Ancient of Days come, and judgment was given to the saints, the Most High, and the time came that the saints possessed the kingdom. That connects up with verse 18, which means the good guys win. Ultimately, in the short thumbnail sketch, God wins. God supersedes the consumption of this kingdom. But it does not dismiss the fact of verse 23. He says this, thus, he said, or therefore, he said, the fourth beast shall be the fourth kingdom upon the earth, which shall be different from all the other kingdoms, and shall devour the whole earth. This is major. This is major. He says the whole earth, and shall tread it down and break it in pieces. The 10 horns out of the kingdom are going to be 10 kings. They're going to arise, and another is going to arise after them. And he shall be different from the first, and he shall subdue 3 kings, and he shall speak great words against God. He's going to here's again a reiteration, he's going to wear out the saints. He's going to beat the saints up. He's going to drag them into very difficult trials and tribulations. He's going to essentially wear out the saints of the Most High. He's going to he's going to think to change times and laws. And they shall be given to his hand until a times, and a dividing 3.5 years. That's what that means. For 3.5 years, 42 months. This thing, this beast, this Greco-Roman Babylonish system that is going to devour the whole earth is going to rule and reign and have its way with the world. And the saints are going to become fodder under its rule. But the judgment shall sit. In other words, verse 26, guess what? The good guys, even though this thing is going to emerge onto the world scene and have its way with those that claim Christ as their Savior, along with others that probably will be so much collateral damage as this thing continues to take over the world and its influences and so on. And I'm going to share with you a little bit of how big this thing's going to be in a minute, right out of Revelation. But be that as it may, the fact remains, brethren, that regardless of how big it gets and how hard it's going to be on God's people, it will lose. It's good to know. Good to know. It ends well for the people of God, even though we've got to go through a little bit of pain. Chapter 8, book of Daniel, continuing on, just to introduce you to the beast. And it is a dictator. It is somebody who's going to be running this machine. And it is going to be somebody that is described here in Daniel 8. Again, the context, I'm not going to spend a lot of time on that because I don't have the time to spend, but I just want to jump in here to verse 23 and introduce us to the latter time. It says, and in the latter time, verse 23, still talking about this fourth kingdom, because this kingdom, you'll see in the sequence through Daniel chapter 8, comes out of Alexander's Greece or Greco kingdom. And essentially the fourth kingdom, which comes after the Greek kingdom and the 4 generals that came out of Alexander the Great. Verse 23, now in chapter 8 of Daniel, we are identifying now who this individual is, what kind of person he's going to be like. In the latter time, in their kingdom, when the transgressors are come to the full, meaning when the sinners come to their full, meaning how bad is the world going to get? Who knows? You think it's bad now. Wait till it fulfills in its fullness of transgression. That's what that's talking about. In other words, You think it's bad now? It's going to get worse. You haven't seen anything yet. He goes on here, and he says, when they come to a king of fierce countenance, understanding dark sentences, he's going to stand up. His power shall be mighty, but not by his own power. And he shall destroy wondrously. Wonderfully is not so much necessarily a good translation. Wondrously. In other words, people are going to be stunned and shall prosper and practice and shall destroy the mighty and holy people. Whoa, there it is again, a confirmation of what we read in Daniel 7. Again, no rapture, brethren. Get ready for some of these things if indeed you are alive. Because the fact of it is, if God's going to protect you, he'll choose to protect you. But the bottom line is, in most cases, and in chances are, we, the children of God, God's church, is going to become persecuted as it was in the early days. What goes around comes around. It started out in tribulation, and it's going to end in tribulation. And through his policies, through his politics, through his governmental policies, he's going to think to change times. He's going to think to change things that you hold dear to you. Could you imagine Thanksgiving being outlawed? You think you're going to go to the Feast of Tabernacles? These are questions, brethren, when the rubber meets the road, how they're going to play out. Because this scriptures, in putting it in real terms, are very, what you could say, possible, plausible, and pragmatically thinking about it, as I say, plausible. So he goes on here and he says, verse 25, chapter 8, Daniel, through the policies also he shall cause craft to prosper in his hands. He shall magnify himself in his heart, and in prosperity shall destroy, through prosperity he shall destroy many. He shall also stand up against the prince, capital P. This system is going to stand up to Christ upon his return. This is the fourth and last kingdom, the one that's going to have its way and essentially influence the whole world. Is going to have basically the presence to go ahead and fight Christ, the Prince of Princes. But he shall be broken without hands, as I mentioned to you before. Again, the good guys, in all due respect, they do win. Now over here in Revelation chapter 13, because Daniel's chapters 7 and 8 tie up with Revelation 13. The Apostle John, writing on the Isle of Patmos, over here talks about this beast and uses actually the same animals that are connected in chapter 7 of the book of Daniel, puts them in reverse order, but nevertheless, you've got the leopard, you've got the bear, you've got the lion in verse 2, and the dragon, Satan the devil, which gave him his power. This is 13 verse 2 of Revelation. I saw one of his heads, as it were, wounded to death. The deadly wound was healed, and all the world, not just the United States, all the world wondered at this system. This is a worldwide system that's going to emerge onto the globe and begin to have tremendous influence on all of mankind. And it goes on, and they worshiped this dragon, which gave power to this government, the beast, and that dictator, and worshiped the beast, saying, who's like unto the beast? Who's able to make war with him? And there was given unto him a mouth speaking great things and blasphemies, and power was given unto him for times and a half a time, 42 months. It's consistent. John confirms Daniel, who lived some 600 years before John. Confirmation, prophetic, fulfillment. As I say, Nostradamus has nothing over the Bible. He goes on here. He opened his mouth and blasphemed against God, that is this beast, to blaspheme his name and his tabernacle and them that dwell in heaven. And it was given to him, the beast, to make war with the saints and to overcome them. Power was given to him over all kindreds, all languages, tongues, all nations. The end game, brethren. That's what this is. That's where we're heading. That's where we're going. That's where it is moving toward in this saga we're all part and parcel to. And all that dwell upon the earth shall worship this government. They will bow down to it and claim it's got all the answers to your health problems. It's got all the answers to your money problems. It's got all the answers to your housing problems. It's got all the answers to your transportation problems. Sound familiar? Sound familiar? It goes on, brethren. Verse 13. If any man has an ear, verse 9, chapter 13, verse 9. If any man has an ear, let him hear. Let him hear. I beheld another beast. Look at this one. Coming up out of the earth. He had 2 horns like a lamb. It's a religious signal. And he spoke as a dragon, spoke as a demon, spoke as a devil. So he's got a religious tone, but he speaks satanically. He speaks demonically. And he exercises all the power of the first beast. So this is the religious arm of the secular government. And it's going to promote the secular government. Look at this. It exercises all the power. This is verse 12, chapter 13, book of Revelation. And the first beast before him, and causes the earth and them which dwell therein to worship the first beast, whose deadly wound was healed. Dropping down to verse 14 for the sake of time, and deceives them that dwell on the earth by the means of the miracles which he had power to do in the sight of the beast. Why, look at that. It's amazing. Did you see that on television? Oh, yeah, I saw it. And then you find out it's a green screen with a bunch of fake stuff going on, or people that have been paid to do certain things and play act and play role the fact that this happened when in fact didn't happen. And everybody says, but it happened. No, it didn't. You're being gaslit. The reality that you're seeing is not the reality that's happening. The reality that you're not seeing is the reality, but you don't see it. Is it happening now? We'll get to that. We'll get to that. But the bottom line here, brethren, is people are going to see miracles that they think this second beast is going to be doing, and are going to fall down, concede, and bend the knee to the government of that time. And he's going to impose something that's going to help him surveil, help him manage, and help him basically control the populations. Verse 16, he causes all, both small and great, doesn't matter your status, rich and poor, free and bond, to receive, to be delivered, to be ministered to bring forth. You're going to get it. This charagma in the Greek, which means etch. It means badge. It means mark. It means scratch. It means something. But it's going to give this system a means by which the people are going to be followed, are going to be surveilled, are going to be managed, are going to be controlled. And he goes on here, and he says here, and that no man without this mark in your right hand or forehead, verse 16, now 17, that no man, you can't buy, you can't sell. Watson, you cannot start a water treatment company unless you get that mark. I love this country. We had freedom. You could go into business for yourself, whatever you want to go into business. You want to sell earrings, you start a business and sell earrings. It's a wonderful country. But a time is coming when that may not be that easy unless you concede, conform, give in. And he says this, no man might buy or sell, and he had a mark, or except he has the mark of the name of the beast or the number of his name. It's going to be something, brethren. I don't know what it is, but it's going to be something that is distinct, that is going to be able to tell this system, you're in the game or you're not in the game. Verse 18, here's wisdom. Let him that understand count the number of the beast, for the number is 666, and we all understand that. A lot of that Hollywood stuff connects it up to Satan, the devil, and so forth, but it's the number of man. It's really the number of man. Yeah, Satan has a lot to do with it in terms of them worshiping Satan and so on, but the bottom line is that it is, in fact, the number of man. Revelation 18, this is the description of this beast's demise. I'm going to read just excerpts of Revelation 18, because it'll serve us well to see just how loved this system is going to become. It illustrates just how much and how rich and how valuable it was to the people of the world that they would be connected with this system. Look at this now, Revelation 18, chapter 18, verse 1. After these things I saw another angel come down from heaven, having great power. The earth was lightened with his glory. And he cried mightily with a strong voice, saying, Babylon the Great, it's fallen, is fallen. It's become a habitation of devils, and the hold of every foul spirit, and a cage of every unclean and hateful bird. For all nations have drunk of the wine, very symbolic here, metaphoric, but nevertheless illustrating the influence and scope of wealth and prosperity that this thing has for all of mankind. Remember how he said he was going to destroy many people through prosperity. That's what you're reading here. Very prosperous. He says, for all nations have drunk of the wine of the wrath of her fornication. The kings of the earth have committed fornication with her, and the merchants of the earth are all waxed rich through the abundance of her delicacies. And I heard another voice from heaven saying, come out of her, my people. In other words, do not become part of this system. Watch out. Stay away from it. Don't receive whatever this mark is. Don't receive it. He goes on here, matter of fact, in chapter 14 of Revelation, verse 9, real quickly, a sidebar. The third angel followed them. I'm not giving you context here, but I just wanted to illustrate to you about this seriousness that God looks upon, whatever this mark is, this charagma that is claimed to be. It says here in verse 9 of chapter 14 of the book of Revelation, the third angel followed them, saying with a loud voice, if any man worship the beast in his image and receives this charagma, this mark, this etch, this badge, whatever it is, in his forehead or right hand, the same shall drink of the wine of the wrath, the anger of God, which is poured out without mixture into the cup of his indignation. So God's serious about the fact of avoiding whatever this item is that gives this system the ability to surveil, control, and basically oversee and manage the populace. Back to 18, we read this. For come out of her, my people, verse 4, that you be not partakers of her sins, and that you receive not of her plagues. Dropping down here to verse 7, we read, how much she has glorified herself and lived delicately. So much torment, sorrow give her. For she says in her heart, I sit a queen, and am no widow, and shall see no sorrow. Very arrogant, too big to fail in the attitude that she has. The kings of the earth who have committed fornication, verse 9, and lived deliciously with her, shall bewail her and lament for her when they shall see the smoke of her burning. The people of the world are going to cry when they see the demise of this system. Why? Because they were such beneficiaries of it. It was all that they lived for. They were benefiting from it. And now they see it all in one day quickly, because what you're reading here is basically the destruction of it upon Christ's return. But he's giving you some backstory of how big it became, how big it got, and what a wonderful blessing it was to so many who thought it was a good thing or a right thing. Dropping down to verse 11, Revelation chapter 18, and the merchants of the earth, they shall weep and mourn over her, for no man buys their merchandise anymore. Verse 19, dropping down for the sake of time, they cast dust on their heads and cried, weeping and wailing, saying, alas, alas, that great city wherein were made rich all that had ships and seas by reason of her costliness. For in 1 hour she is made desolate. Dropping down to verse 22 as we wrap it up here. And in the voice of harpers and musicians and pipers and trumpeters shall be heard no more at all in you. Wow, it was a party time in this system. Musicians and trumpeters and gaiety and so forth. Wonderful times. Everybody was celebrating. Shall be heard no more at all in you. And no craftsman of whatsoever craft he be shall be found any more in you. And the sound of a millstone shall be heard no more at all in you. And the light of a candle shall shine no more at all in you, and the voice of the bridegroom and the bride, marriages and so forth, shall be heard no more at all in you. For your merchants were the great men of the earth, for by your sorceries were all nations deceived. And in her was found the blood of the prophets and of the saints. Why, how did that happen? I thought we were raptured. We've been reading it. Daniel 7, Daniel 8. We've been reading it. Revelation 13. This system is going to have its way with God's people. Those people who resist this governmental system will suffer hardship. Maybe incarceration, maybe death. Who knows what this thing is going to play out in and the effects it's going to have on the lives of those who resist its influences, resist its controls. And so here, as I say, it was also found that the blood of the prophets and the saints and of all that were slain, so there'll be others, collateral damage, upon the earth by this thing. Revelation 17, just a page back, we see that it is a mystery Babylonian system that is well connected to the Greco-Roman Babylonian process that we are connected to through our histories of sun-worshiping gods and so on, and all the things that we ourselves even suffer from today in the traditional Christian community, of which Christmas is one of those items. Easter is another piece of evidence of the pagan influences that people have adopted and embraced as to be Christian as a result of the deceptions and sorceries that Satan, the devil, has been able to engage and infiltrate into the minds of people who thought they were doing good when in fact they weren't. So here, in Revelation 17, we see there came one of the seven angels which had seven vials, talked with me, saying unto me, come here, I want to show you something. Verse 2, with whom the kings of the earth have committed. Let me go back to verse 1 because I wanted to read this. I will show unto you the judgment of the great whore. That's the system. That's what we've been talking about, this beast that sits upon many waters. God considers it, that system, a whore. Verse 2, with whom the kings of the earth have committed fornication, and the inhabitants of the earth have made drunk with the wine of her fornication. The verse 11, dropping down for the sake of time, the beast that was and is not, even he is the eighth. That is, this dictator is actually the eighth, but he's of the seven, meaning he's a combination of Babylon, the Medes, and the Greeks, and the Roman system that is described in Daniel chapter 7. He's part of that. That's in his history. It's his DNA. It's his genealogy, if you will, that you can trace him back to that. And so we're being told here in this case in chapter 17, the 10 horns, verse 12, chapter 17 of Revelation, and the 10 horns which you saw, here we go now. We've got some definition coming. Are 10 kings, all right? Kings we know rule countries, which have received no kingdom yet in John's timeline, but receive powers as kings, leaders, managers, 1 hour with the beast, a short time with the beast. These, the 10, have one mind and shall give their power and strength to the dictator, to the beast. It's going to be a socialistic system that's going to be cooperatively coalesced together to exercise influence on the world, and there's going to be 10 other locations combining their wealth, assets, powers, leadership, influences to this central person and system to engage whatever they're going to engage in. And he goes on here. And he says, they have one mind. They're going to give power and strength to the beast. There it is. They're going to work as one, these 10, with the beast. They shall make war with the Lamb, and the Lamb shall overcome them. The good guys win, for he's Lord of lords, King of kings. And they that are with him are called, chosen, and faithful, and that's us. And he says unto me, the waters which you saw, that goes back up to verse 1 of chapter 17. The whore that sits upon many waters. What are the many waters? Let the Bible interpret itself. Verse 15, he says to me, the waters which you saw, where the whore sat, are people. They're multitudes. They're nations. And they're languages. In other words, this thing is worldwide. It is worldwide and growing by leaps and bounds. So, in short, I've got some other scriptures, but I think you get the point that I'm trying to make here. We are on an end game route, and we have a meeting with destiny up ahead that's going to be pretty controlling. It's going to be global in scope, and it's going to have infringements, infiltrations, encroachments on your personal life. And if you don't get with the system through this charagma, whatever that is, and I don't know what it is, but it's something that's going to give leverage to, access to you for this system that's in place. And if you don't have it, you can't work, you can't eat. Your freedoms will be limited based on what we've just read here in Scripture. So this is going to be global, and that's all I'm saying. It's basically a global influencing power, and with a large degree of control on the population via this charagma, whatever it is. As I said, this is the end game, and this is, as I say, mankind's appointment with destiny and where we're going. So that brings me to the question. It brings me to the question, is there any signs of this developing now? Is there any signs of infancy of this kind of trend, trajectory of sort, that is moving in this direction that seems to conform, or at least plausibly have potential of developing into some of this stuff that I just kind of introduced you to as the end game and where we're going? Well, let me ask you another question. Have any of you, raise your hand, I'm looking for a hand raising. I'd like to see how many have heard of the term Agenda 2030. Agenda 2030. Okay? How many of you have ever heard of the second one? The Great Reset. The Great Reset. Okay. So, some of you are indeed informed of certain potentialities that represents. I've got a little bit of time left. I don't know how much I'm going to be able to get into this, but as you know, many people do not believe that Agenda 2030, or for that matter, the Great Reset, is what it has been characterized to be via all the chatter on the internet. They have relegated it to a conspiracy theory, that it has no bearing, it's just a bunch of hot air, and really doesn't matter, and is not being essentially characterized correctly. I'm going to hopefully quote to you 3 articles. They're all about 2 years old. They go back to 2021. The first one is from the BBC, and it essentially is telling us that the Great Reset and how it got hijacked by the conspiracy theorists. This is from the BBC. And they promote, of course, the idea that it is nothing more than conspiracy. And I'm quoting. In June of 2020, the Prince of Wales, that is King Charles now, and the head of the annual Davos summit launched an initiative calling for the pandemic to be seen as a chance for what they called a great reset in global economy. There is a nice basically video, and I'm not going to play it. I was going to play it. It's 2 minutes long, but I'm not going to play it. But it's Prince Charles. At that time, he was Prince Charles in 2021. He's king now, but nevertheless, says essentially what they're planning on doing. I'll get to some of that later on with some of the other things that perhaps you've heard of, but remember, these quotes, these articles are 2 years old. 2 years old. 2020, this was written in June 2021. I'm doing that on purpose because I want to show you and illustrate to you some progressions that are quite stunning and sobering. It goes on here. We have an incredible opportunity. It says, this is the takeaway of that video. We have an incredible opportunity. As a matter of fact, I think we'll put the video into this sermon and when we post it as a separate. But at any rate, you may want to, when it's posted, you may want to go back and see this video. We'll put it in there. But the takeaway from that video is, this is a quote that Prince Charles at the time said, "We have an incredible opportunity to create entirely new sustainable industries. Secondly, the time to act is now." And so the article contains content provided by the BBC, and it goes on here and says the other founder, and of course the other founder is Professor Klaus Schwab, head of the World Economic Forum, the WEF, and that's all I'm going to use, WEF, the World Economic Forum, which organizes annual summits at Davos in the world and assembles the world's wealthiest and most powerful people once a year. He says, quote, "The pandemic represents a rare but narrow window of opportunity to reflect, reimagine, and reset our world to create a healthier, more equitable, and more prosperous future." Schwab does speak about a wealth tax, ending fossil fuel subsidies, but the scope is huge, covering technology, climate change, the future of work, international security, and other themes, and it's difficult to see precisely what the Great Reset might mean in practice. And so, the lack of clarity, combined with the plan being launched by an influential organization, provided fertile ground for conspiracy theorists to grow. It's natural. It happened because it wasn't really well defined when they introduced it publicly in 2020. So he goes on here. The proposals, and I'm quoting again from the article, along with the WEF itself, face legitimate criticisms from a variety of sources. Conservative political figures and media outlets accuse the organization of pushing for environmental policies that would hurt the economy. There are questions about whether unelected individuals like Schwab should have the power to lobby so prominently with ideas that could potentially transform the global economy. The Davos meeting is certainly filled with powerful people who have huge influences on world events. There are also concerns about the impact of technology on civil liberties and jobs. The term Great Reset has received more than 8 million interactions on Facebook. This is 2021. Keep that in mind, not now. 2021. We're 2 years down the road from this. But I'm using this on purpose. I wanted to use these old articles for a comparison on where we are today and where they thought we were going in 2021. He says here, 8 million. Facebook had 8 million. 2 million was on Twitter at that time. Now it's X because Elon bought it. And as a result, they had a lot of hits on it. Among the most popular posts are the baseless statements. Now here's the BBC quoting. Baseless statements that the Great Reset is a strategic part of a grand conspiracy by the global elite who somehow planned and managed the COVID-19 pandemic. Is this narrative lockdown restrictions were introduced not to curb the spread of the virus, but to deliberately bring about economic collapse and a socialist world government, albeit run for the benefit of the powerful capitalists? The nebulousness of this conspiracy theory means it has found followers among the anti-activists anti-lockdown campaigners, New Age healers, and those on the far right and far left. Melanie Smith, head of analysis at Graphica, who researches online movements and disinformation, says the rumors are typical of an anti-establishment conspiracy theory. The most intricate of these typical prove popular with government skeptics from across the political spectrum, she says. In the hands of diverse groups of online activists, the Great Reset has been transformed from a call to encourage people to think about a sustainable future to a sinister plot against humanity. And that's the conspiracy, you see. Is it something good for all of humanity, or is it a sinister plot? Because the conspiracy theorists think it's a sinister plot. And it was all planned. And now it's being manipulated. And this article from the BBC seems to be supporting that. How did it go viral? On the 15th of November, the phrase started trending on Twitter with a video, a viral showing Canadian Prime Minister Justin Trudeau at a UN meeting in September. He was at a UN meeting, Trudeau was, saying the pandemic provided an opportunity for a reset. But some claimed his speech was proof that global leaders were using the pandemic as a pretext to introduce a range of socialist and environmental policies. Experts say similar ideas about the emergence of a totalitarian world government have been circulating since the 60s under the umbrella of the New World Order. We've heard of that. New World Order since the 1960s, 1984, the book and so forth, all those things that we're well aware of, which itself borrows ideas from conspiracy theories going back to the 18th century of all things. I'm back quoting, Great Reset skeptics repackage those ideas, folding in new baseless COVID-era claims, for instance, about how contain microchips and enslave the people. In response to the question about whether the discussion had been hijacked by conspiracists, the WEF said in a statement, look, conspiracy theories replace reason with fantasy. They are noisy but peripheral part of the public sphere. And so as a result, conspiracy beliefs are also seeping into the discussion about global response to climate change as well. And so they expected. Ms. Smith, Melanie Smith, she says online activists also deny the existence of climate change, often engage with the Great Reset theory to dismiss sustainability and renewable energy initiatives as an elite agenda for control. The overlap of those conversations may become stronger as climate issues become even more prominent, she says. And so in this particular case, brethren, we begin to see that for all intents and purposes, the term Great Reset was introduced, basically the takeaway, in the Davos meetings in 2020 and brought forward as their explanation to what they would like to do to make the world a better, happier place. And the conspiracy theorists grabbed a hold of it, and allegedly, according to the BBC, there's no substance to this because, frankly, it's all about goodness. There's nothing sinister about what WEF and Dr. Schwab or Professor Schwab is doing, or Bill Gates or George Soros or Mark Zuckerberg or, I was going to say Dave Bezos, but no, it's Bezos. Sorry, Dave, if you're watching, I didn't mean that. I really didn't mean that. But you know what I'm talking about in this regard. And so, as a result, the conspiracy theorists are on one side, and you've got the people of the other opinion on the other side claiming all's well, don't worry about a thing, sit back, relax, enjoy the ride. So I want to bring you to another article. And this is from The Economy, quoting titled, Conspiracy Theories Aside. Okay, so what this article is asking you to do, forget the argument. Let's not get into the weeds. Forget the argument. Let's put them to the side. Conspiracy theories, put them to the side, okay? Conspiracy theories aside, this from The Economy says there is something fishy about the Great Reset. There is. This is 2 months later from the BBC article, still 2021, month of August, okay? 2 years old. This article's 2 years old. I want you to understand that. So he goes on. The Great Reset conspiracy theories don't seem to want to die. The theories were triggered by the World Economic Forum, WEF, summit last year, in 2020, which had the theme, the Great Reset, and argued that the COVID crisis was an opportunity to address the burning issues facing the world. According to the BBC, you just read it, the term Great Reset has received over 8 million, we just read it, on Facebook, 2 million on Twitter, since the WEF started its initiative. The set of conspiracy theories around the Great Reset, and I'm still quoting, are nebulous and hard to pin down, but piecing them together gives us something like this. The Great Reset is the global elite's plan to instate a communist world order by abolishing private property while using COVID-19 to solve overpopulation and enslaving what remains of humanity with. So, I go back. At the heart of the conspiracy theories are supposed secret agendas and malicious intent. While these may be absent from the WEF's Great Reset initiative, what is found was something almost as sinister, hiding in plain sight. So put all that to the side. Regardless of that, there's something else that's more sinister, according to this guy in The Economy. And he says here, essentially, in fact, more sinister because it's real and it's happening now and involves things as fundamental as food, tech in the digital world, and I'll say healthcare. Those three categories: food, technology, healthcare. These three areas. The magic words are stakeholder capitalism. Brethren, if you don't remember anything, remember that. Stakeholder capitalism. This is an important distinction to make between that and what we are involved with today in free market capitalism. I don't want to get too much into the weeds here, lest you end up all falling off the chairs and stuff, but that's an important identity word term to keep in mind, a concept that the WEF, Klaus Schwab, has been hammering for decades, occupies pride of place in the WEF's reset plan from June 2020. The idea is that global capitalism should be transformed so that corporations no longer focus solely on serving shareholders for dividends and so on, but become custodians of society by creating value for customers, suppliers, employees, communities, and other stakeholders. The way the WEF sees stakeholder capitalism being carried out is through a range of multi-stakeholder partnerships, bringing together the private sector, governments, and civil societies across all areas of global governance. This is key. The idea of a stakeholder capitalism and multi-stakeholder partnerships might sound warm and fuzzy until you dig deeper and realize that this actually means giving corporations more power over society and democratic institutions. Less. The Great Reset was called a global redesign initiative drafted by the WEF. The Great Reset originated with its original name, the Global Redesign Initiative. It was drafted by the WEF in 2008. The initiative contains a 600-page report transforming global governance. In the WEF's vision, the government's voice would be one among many without always being the final arbitrator. Governments would be just one stakeholder in a multi-stakeholder model of global governance. Harris Gleckman, senior fellow at the University of Massachusetts, describes the report as the most comprehensive proposal for redesigning global governance since the formulation of the United Nations since World War II. Who are these non-governmental stakeholders? Well, Saudi Aramco, Shell, Chevron, BP. In food, that's in oil, by the way. In food, Unilever, Coca-Cola, Nestle's. Technology, you know them, Facebook, Google, Amazon, Microsoft, Apple. Pharmaceuticals, AstraZeneca, Pfizer, and Moderna. Running course, making decisions for the people, making policy, influencing, lobbying. That's what this is all about. Instead of corporations serving many stakeholders, the multi-stakeholder model of the global governance corporations are promoted to be official stakeholders of global decisions. This is important. In practice, corporations become the main stakeholder while the governments take a backseat role, and civil society is mainly a window dressing. You and I just become window dressings. There's so much more here that I wanted to share with you, but time is really running short on me here. Point being, in this particular case, there are things in play that are indeed been already signed over and basically are working in agreement with and in conforming to this plan of stakeholding. And as a result, you've got the categories of food, big tech, and of course this other one, healthcare, that they call COVAX, which is an initiative aims to accelerate the development and manufacture of, and consequently, obviously, want everybody to go ahead and do that. It goes on here. It was set up as a multi-stakeholder group. It's got a couple of groups that are all working with it, along with, of course, the individual who owns the most farmland in the United States, Bill Gates Foundation, 275,000 acres of land the Bill Gates Foundation has regarding farmland. Now, why is that? Food is one category. And then, of course, you've got the Pfizer, GlaxoSmithKline, AstraZeneca, Johnson & Johnson. They're all in on this as well, and obviously influencing and taking on the role of attempting to make policy and decisions in some of these things. The last article I want to read from here is What is the Great Reset by a guy named Michael Rechtenwald. And I realize that this is involved, brethren, but this is really good information for you to be aware of in terms of the professional level of this information. This guy has a BA from University of Pittsburgh, an MA from Case Western Reserve, PhD in Literary Cultural Studies from Carnegie Mellon University. He's taught at New York University, Duke, North Carolina, Central University, Carnegie Mellon, Case Western. He's authored many books, a good handful of books. This guy is no dummy. He's a very well-rounded, intelligent, well-educated professional. He writes for the Imprimis, and that is a basic newsletter that comes out of the college that is part and parcel to advancing certain ideas that are admittedly on a more conservative level. But he writes this in this article, What is the Great Reset? Real quickly. Is the Great Reset a conspiracy theory imagining vast left-wing plots to establish totalitarian one-world governments? No. Despite the fact that some people may have spun conspiracy theories based on it, with some reason, as we will see, the Great Reset is real. This, by the way, is 2 years old, too. This is 2 years old, too. 2 months after the second one that I just read you. So this is in December of 2021, this was written. And basically, it's a summary of a presentation that he gave, delivered at Hillsdale College. That's what I couldn't think of before. Hillsdale College, that he's associated with them, during a Center for Conservative Alternative Conference, the Great Reset. That was the subject. Indeed, last year, Schwab, founder of the executive chairman of the World Economic Forum, a famous organization made up the world's political, economic, and cultural elites meeting annual in Davos, Switzerland. Mallorit, a co-founder of the WEF, also published the book COVID-19, The Great Reset. They all define the reset as a means of addressing the weakness in capitalism. This was written 2 years ago. Schwab, an engineer and economist training, published first book, Modern Enterprise Management in Mechanical Engineering. It was a book that Schwab first introduced in the concept that he would later call stakeholder capitalism, arguing that the management of modern enterprise must serve not only shareholders but stakeholders to achieve long-term growth prosperity. Schwab and the WEF have promoted the idea of stakeholder capitalism ever since. A decade ago, a publication of a 2010 book, The Great Reset, by a guy named Richard Florida, wrote in the aftermath of the 2008 financial crisis that Florida book argued that there are economic crashes and cycles that occur. 1870 was one, the 1930s was another, 2008 was another. And consequently, they happen, and these are opportunities to capitalize on. 4 years after Florida's book was published, at the 24th annual meeting, W.F. Schwab declared, "We want to do in Davos this year is to push the reset button." And subsequently, the image of the reset button would appear on the WEF's website as a logo. So, that brings us to May 2018. In this article, May 2018. I don't know how many of you are aware of this. This is important to recognize. The WEF collaborated with Johns Hopkins Center for the Health Security to conduct CLAD-X, a simulation of a national pandemic response. It was a dry run. It was a practice. 2018. 2018. The WEF collaborated with Johns Hopkins on a high security to conduct CLAD-X, a simulation of a national pandemic response, specifically to exercise and simulate the outbreak of a novel strain of a human para-influenza virus with genetic elements of the Nipah virus called CLAD-X. The simulation ended with a news report stating that in the face of the CLAD-X, without effective, experts tell us that eventually 30 to 40 million deaths would occur in the U.S., 900 million around the world, 12% of the global population. Clearly, preparation for a global pandemic was in order. That was done in 2018. October 2019, the WEF again, collaborating with Johns Hopkins and Bill Gates Foundation on another pandemic exercise, Event 201. So we had CLAD-X, and now we've got Event 201, which simulated another dry run. Practice. These are exhibition games. Event 201, which simulated an international response to the outbreak of a novel coronavirus. This was 2 months before the COVID outbreak in China became news and 5 months before the World Health, WHO, declared a pandemic and closely resembled the future COVID scenario, including incorporating the idea of an asymptomatic spread. The CLAD-X and Event 201 simulations anticipated almost every eventuality of the actual COVID crisis, most notably the responses by governments, health agencies, media, tech companies, and the elements of the public. The responses and their effects included worldwide lockdowns, collapses of businesses, industry, adoptions of biometric surveillance, technologies, an emphasis on social media, censorship to combat misinformation, the flooding of social and legacy medias with authoritative sources, widespread riots, and mass unemployment. 2 dry runs, 2018, 2019, and then all of a sudden, after 2019, 5 months later, boom, it goes for real. Conspiracy? Planned? Come to your own conclusions in this, brethren. Bottom line is, it's funny, I've often said, they're watching, and they learned a lot as these things unfolded. So in addition to being promoted as a response to COVID, the Great Reset is promoted as a response to climate change. That's another issue. And it goes on here with climate change. But what I wanted to essentially kind of conclude here, because time is running out on me with this, and you're probably happy that it is, because I'm reading a lot. But at any rate, I wanted to just mention this as I close up on this, because this is very important. The WEF is driving toward the 4IR. That means the fourth industrial revolution. The three before that was basically the electrical, mechanical, and digital revolutions. This is the 4IR marks the convergence of existing and emerging fields, including big data, artificial intelligence, machine learning, quantum computing, genetics, nanotechnology, and robotics. The foreseen result will be the merging of the physical, digital, and biological worlds, which present a challenge to the ontologies by which we understand ourselves and the world, including what the definition of a human being is. In other words, this is all about merging machines with biology. The bionic man, the bionic woman, beginning to look at human beings as platforms, to be able to even plug into hard drives so you can download. Remember the movie The Matrix? Download a language. I could learn a language in 5 minutes or whatever, maybe 5 seconds, I don't know. Bottom line is, they're talking about making you and I digital. They call them actually netizens. Instead of citizens, we're netizens. Netizens instead of citizens. That's what they call those that are involved in this. He goes on, what's the difference about the globalist vision of 4IR is an attempt to harness it to the ends of the Great Reset. If already existing 4IR developments are any indication of the future, meaning they're already going on, it's already going on. 2 years ago, it's already going on. We're 2 years down the line. He goes on here and he says, if already existing 4IR developments are any indication of the future, then the claim that it will contribute to human happiness is false. These developments include internet algorithms that feed users prescribed news and advertisements, downrank to exclude banned content, algorithms that censor social media content, consign dangerous individuals and organizations to digital gulags, keyword warrants based on search engines inputs, apps that tracked and traced COVID violations and report offenders to the police, robot police with scanners to identify and round up the and other dissidents, smart cities where residents are digital entities to be monitored, surveilled, and recorded, and where data on their every move is collected, collated, stored, and attached to a digital identity and a social credit score. Meaning, if you're good, you get so many points. If you're bad, you don't get so many points. And that's all related to freedoms of travel, of what you can buy, where you can go. And brethren, as it ends here, this individual says, because it's already happening, and this is 2 years ago, he says, just as Schwab, and I'm ending it here, and the WEF predicted, the COVID crisis has accelerated the Great Reset. Monopolistic corporations have consolidated their grip on the economy from above, while socialism continues to advance for the rest of us below. In partnership with big digital, big pharma, and the mainstream media, national and international health agencies, healthcare, and compliant populations, people that submit to it and just do it, hitherto democratic Western states, think especially Australia, New Zealand, and Austria, are all being transformed in a totalitarian regime modeled after China. And how is that happening? Because China's already well in advance with cameras, millions of dollars of cameras all over the place. Citizen scores where you can't go, without getting basically surveilled in some areas. And Dave would probably know much more about that because he's been in China many, many times in this particular case. So, brethren, I just want to ask all of you again some questions. Have you ever heard about the term cashless society? Have you heard the term digital wallet? Have you heard 15-minute cities? Have you heard open borders? Have you heard transhumanism? How about the term social credits? Green energy? Reduction of fossil fuels? Stakeholder capitalism? I never heard of that one. How about eating bugs, less meat? carbon footprint taxation, destruction of the family, the rise of homosexuality, abortion, euthanasia, education of children by the state's curriculum, removal of God from the foundation, from education, and toxic food, air, and water. How about GMOs? GMOs? Meat that isn't meat? And, French fries from McDonald's, boy, I'll tell you what, it's really something what's inside of some of that stuff. Virtual realities. How about social mediums, which remove real action and relationships? Games, virtual realities, pharmaceuticals, migration. How about postmodern thinking? Moral relativism. Corporations control. Tech, healthcare, communications, transportation. How about robotics and artificial intelligence? Artificial intelligence. All of these things, brethren, are things that are developing as we all are indeed experiencing, and they are beginning to tighten down on all of us. Cleveland is already earmarked as being one of those 15-minute cities where people will just live in 15-minute radius. They could do everything, go shopping, visit, do what they got to do, not even own a car, that kind of stuff. There's a lot of discussion going on in this particular area. So what am I saying? I wanted to give you an FYI. We're 2 years down the road, and a lot of the terms that I just used to see how many of you are aware of them are well ensconced already in motion. And all of these items, their trajectories, are designed to feed that global system that is in the baby stages, emerging onto the world scene. I wanted to share this with you using 2-year-old articles to illustrate to you how far we've come today, 2 years down the road. Matthew 24, as we lock this up here, I'm a little over time, but I appreciate you bearing patience with me. Chapter 42, verse 24, verse 42, chapter 24, verse 42. Watch you therefore, for you know not what hour your Lord is coming. But know this, that if the good man of the house had known in what watch the thief was going to come, he would have watched and would not have suffered his house to be broken up. Therefore, be you also ready, for in such an hour as you think not, the Son of Man will come. Who then is faithful and a wise servant whom his Lord has made ruler over the household to give him meat in due season? Blessed, this is the answer, blessed is that servant whom his Lord, when he comes, shall find so doing. Verily, I say to you, that he shall make him ruler over all his goods. But if that evil servant shall say in his heart, my Lord delays his coming, and begins to smite his fellow servants, eat and drink with the drunken, the Lord of the servant shall come in a day when he's not looking for him, and in an hour when he's unaware of it, and shall cut him asunder, and appoint him with the portion with the hypocrites. There shall be weeping and gnashing of teeth. Brethren, it's important all of us recognize we've got to endure unto the end. Pray for our nation. We are in deep trouble, without a doubt. There is hope that America will indeed be able to stand, because without an America, without the United States of America, the world will indeed suffer a tremendous change in character and in social structure. Jesus called it a times of the Gentiles, because now the birthright nation still leverages a certain element of balance of power. But the reality of it is, if there is no more balance of power from a birthrighted nation, consequently this world is now without instruments and going toward the emergence of that beast, that global power. Without a doubt, we need to pray for our nation, be thankful, take some time this year, really, at the feast of the Thanksgiving feast. And be thankful for your friends and your relatives, your family, all those that truly you love and they love you. And of course, have a wonderful, pleasant, warm, and great, rejuvenating, and inspiring Thanksgiving.